back in 1994, if you had painted a picture of where this U.S. team would be going into a home World Cup in 2026, I would have said to you, oh, we should be challenging for a World Cup. Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show, we'll be talking Adams onward, Sargent's return, Pulisic's perfect 10, 11, 12, we'll figure it out, bad Rashford, Mbappe Trey, Houston, 500 days out from the 2026 World Cup, Stu Holden's hot takes, and so much more. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding lights, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Monday, January 27th in the year 2025?
I'm doing well. Welcome back.
Thank you. You can hear my voice is not quite back, but it's getting back. But yeah, I was a mess during my travels. I lost my voice. And I didn't want to do that to you or any to our listeners or viewers out there. But I want to thank you and Doug McIntyre and obviously Stu Holden for holding down the fort and entertaining me. I listened to all the shows, and you guys did a wonderful, wonderful job. So thank you. But I'm back now. I know for a lot of people, me losing my voice is a gift from the gods, the soccer gods, if you will. But it's coming back, baby. And when it does, look out. You're
like John Bon Jovi dealing with vocal issues.
God, I hope it's not that serious, my friend. Goodness gracious. Yeah, it's been fine. But I had a wonderful week of travels all over the place. A lot of different experiences. We'll talk about some of that later on. How are you?
I'm doing well. You might recall this podcast began back in February of 2018.
Vaguely, yes.
In the week leading up to a Super Bowl in which the Eagles were going to be looking to take down a dynastic Patriots team led by Tom Brady. And now, 7 years later, Tom Brady will be in the booth for Fox a couple of weeks from now in New Orleans as an Eagles team looks to take down a dynastic Chiefs team led by Patrick Mahomes.
I think you just like to say dynastic. The interesting thing is oftentimes when we talk about soccer, and we talk about MLS actually, it's relative to the manufactured parody. And obviously there's an incredible amount of connection and history when it comes to the NFL and leadership and people and ideas relative to MLS. And yet we find ourselves here, in like you said, in a dynastic type of moment here. Is this a bad thing for the NFL that we are seeing a continual return of, in this case, the Kansas City Chiefs to the final?
No, because the way the NFL is structured, for a team to dominate in this fashion, there's tremendous merit because it's a level playing field as far as a salary cap and everything else. So it's not like the way we see in European soccer where certain clubs just have way more money than others, and that's why they win, and some people find that problematic. That's not really the case here.
But you wouldn't have had any problem if Patrick Mahomes and company did not go on to the final, right?
I don't have this incredible dislike for the Chiefs that others do. But yeah, watching that game, I did find myself rooting for the Bills. And, when you gain first downs twice on the same series and the refs don't give it to you, that hurts. I mean, those were some questionable spots. As a Michigan fan, I'm still scarred by what happened in Columbus in 2016. And now Bills fans know what Michigan fans suffered through back then.
Well, look, regardless, we are going to watch and have a wonderful Super Bowl. Obviously, it's happening on Fox, and we know a lot of people in front of the camera and behind the camera are going to be heading out there, and it's going to be fun to watch. But yes, Mr. Mahomes and who's the other guy? The one that's married to Taylor Swift,
Travis Kelce.
He's going to be there too, right? And then obviously his wife, what's her name? Taylor Swift. There we go. All right, cool.
Also, late last week, the Oscar nominations came out.
Yes.
I have seen 9 of the 10 Best Picture nominees. The only one missing is The Substance, which is this movie with Demi Moore. I'm going to watch that this week, so I will have seen all 10.
Wow. All right. My wife wanted me to tell you that she watched, give me the name of it again.
Emilia Perez.
Emilia Perez. And she actually really enjoyed it. She said there was only one musical moment that took her a little bit out of it. I don't know which one it is. I'll find out which one it is. But she really actually enjoyed it, and she wanted me to tell you, because anytime there's something about the film industry or anything like that, she knows to go directly to the source over there. I don't have anything that I watched. Like I said, I was on the road, a lot of flights here and there. But I have recently gone down some rabbit holes of YouTube relative to guitars. And I don't know, do you do the TikTok thing and stuff like that?
No.
Well, anyway, there's a thing where on TikTok they will, it's incredibly soothing to see people fix things and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's a whole industry in fixing guitars, and it's just fascinating to see people take these guitars that have been either abused or they just haven't been used for a long time, and to kind of restore them back to their beauty and stuff like that. So I'm constantly watching videos, and I'm even thinking about myself trying to do some of that. But it looks easier, I know, on the YouTube videos than it would in real life. But who knows? Maybe I'll try that. But I don't have anything here in terms of what to watch. I'll have something probably later on this week. My friend, shall we light this candle?
Let's do it.
Where shall we start?
We're going to begin with the U.S. men's national team. Given your absence last week, you have yet to comment on this podcast on the friendly wins over Venezuela and Costa Rica. Overall thoughts on the window and also on the direction of the program under Mauricio Pochettino, which I know is a question you've been asked on X.
Yeah, so I want to care more about this window than I actually do. And yes, we understand that it was always going to be inexperienced and young players. I thought that, for example, or maybe not even inexperienced, a return when it comes to someone like Zach Steffen, who I actually thought did well in the second game, made some really, really nice saves, and I think not that he needed to reestablish himself because he's still Zach Steffen, but I think he did what he needed to do in those games. Now, we don't see what happens behind the scenes, so what these players are doing on a day-to-day basis in the training also matters. Doesn't matter as much as the game, but someone for Zach Steffen, for example, I think he comes out of it continuing to look good in this, shall we say, this rehabilitation of him. Defensively, this team wasn't challenged a whole lot. I think a lot of people, once they saw, the return of, a Tim Ream, it just reminded you that, hey, this is as good as it gets, and that's not good enough. It was really interesting to see the reaction to someone like Diego Luna. And this goes back to something on my travels. People would come up to me because, oftentimes it's, hey, you're the soccer guy. Let's talk about soccer. And whether there was a spectrum of knowledge when it came to soccer, but inevitably when they were talking about the U.S. men's national team, what they wanted to see, even if they had watched it for years or just watched a little bit, almost to a person, they were like, is this team going to inspire me? And so, when Diego Luna came on and there was blood and all that kind of stuff, I think it really resonated with people, regardless of the actual kicking of the ball. And so the only reason I say that is I think as Pochettino continues to take this team forward, that, for lack of a better word, grit that I think has been a hallmark over the years of the U.S. men's national team, I hope that he finds a way not just to get it back, but to encourage it and use it. And it can't be the only thing. We all understand that. But we just don't want to throw that baby out with the bathwater. And I think that this kind of harkened back to what people kind of love about the U.S. men's national team, is that there's an understanding that there may be others that are better than us, individually and collectively along the way. But we will run through a wall, and we will do the things physically and mentally that tax us, and some of it very, very visibly. And that resonates with people. That resonates with people, whether they're huge soccer fans or not. So I think that was good. Ajiman, obviously, you come in and not a lot of people have seen you, not a lot of people know about you, and to score in both of the games, one as a starter and then one as a substitute, and especially with the continued rotating cast of characters up there when it comes to the 9 position, I think he certainly comes out of it looking good. I thought actually Brian White was good. And let's see. Other than that, you're I mean, Jack McGlynn, I think, these are all good players. I don't think that they're great players. I did not come out of it thinking, oh my God, there's an incredible amount of depth that is going to challenge relative to 2026. Now, beyond that, I'm not saying that they're not going to be a part of it, but that's really what happened. And maybe I'm even grasping when it comes to this window.
Do you have an issue with our staff using the term Camp Cupcake on graphics? I know that's kind of a derisive nickname.
I don't care. I think there has always been a recognition that this is not the full team because it can't be the full team. But I think there's also a recognition that every once in a while somebody's going to come out, and I'm okay with it. I don't think it's a bad thing, and we've called it that for a long time. So anyway,
what about the overall direction of the program under Pochettino?
So I got asked this question, and I started to think about it, and it occurred to me, and I tried to put myself back in my shoes back in 1994. And I came, it wasn't a kind of epiphany or anything like that, but I did come to a realization that the version of myself back in 1994, if you had painted a picture of where this U.S. team would be going into a home World Cup in 2026, I would have said to you, oh, we should be challenging for a World Cup. It shouldn't even be a question. I would have laughed off any other type of framing of it. And so in that sense, I find myself a little disappointed that we're not farther along, that we haven't live up to that. Now, I also recognize that growth is not always linear, and there are ups and downs and backs and forths and all that kind of stuff as you go on. And also, looking back, this isn't assessing blame and why did we do this here and why didn't we do this here? Because overall, the growth of the sport, and we've talked about this time and time again on the State of the Union, has been phenomenal. And you can put it up against any country and culture in the world, and it will blow it out of the water. But I would have thought in my version of 1994 that we would have been further along. And again, when you say that, people say, "Oh, well, it's because of MLS, or it's because of the United States Soccer Federation, or it's because of you, Alexi, and the things that you say, or it's because of Mosse, or anything like that." No, this is not about blame. This is just about how I feel about this team right now. Again, we are recording here on Monday, Mosse, 500 days before the start of the 2026 World Cup. In a time and a moment where I think collectively we should be a lot more confident going into the 2026 World Cup than we are right now. Not to say that over the next 500 days, things can't change. And by the way, you should be reminded that we all got together, when I say we, the U.S. men's national team, we all got together in January of 1993 to prepare for the summer of 1994. So it's almost the exact same type of timing. Now, the circumstances were different, but it's a short period of time, but a lot can happen in the next 500 days. And in order for us to, potentially win a World Cup, a men's World Cup in 2026, a lot has to happen.
Now, with the exception of Milhevic, the U.S. squad for these last 2 games was entirely MLS-based, which caused some fans to dismiss the games because all of the U.S.'s best players play in Europe. Last week on this podcast, both Doug McIntyre and Stu Holden advocated for MLS to try to change that dynamic by signing top U.S. national team players like Pulisic, McKennie, and Reyna in the lead up to the World Cup. You applauded that take, while others like Eric Winalda mocked it.
Well, that should tell you everything right there. Look, I thought that Stu Holden's take was chef's kiss. I had a little tear in that my good little buddy there, this was the perfect type of opinion, take, whatever the hell you want to call it out there. In that, yes, it was provocative. Yes, on its surface, it triggered people. And certainly elicited plenty of response out there. But what also was happening is that initial response oftentimes was all that happened for a lot of people, and they didn't understand, because they didn't listen, as to what was actually being said. And what he was saying makes complete sense. It's not Stu Holden's responsibility to have them listen to everything that he says, especially when he kicks it off with the flaming hot part of the take. But it is important, I think, for people to recognize what he was saying relative to Major League Soccer, in that Major League Soccer, and we've said this time and time again, is a business. Their responsibility is to their business and doing things that help their business. If in the process they can help out the national team, that's great. But we have said oftentimes that we want to see big, bold, arrogant types of things that are being done. And that certainly would be a big, bold type of thing. And yes, it would be relative to 2026, but it would be MLS saying this is what's going to be good for MLS. And I thoroughly reject the notion that in this case, what he is talking about wouldn't even necessarily be bad for the national team. Yes, we have seen in the past where the likes of Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley and Clint Dempsey have come back. But a player coming back to play in Major League Soccer before the 2026 World Cup does not mean that he can, or she for that matter, cannot star in that World Cup. And it's just, there's people that have a certain view and a embedded dislike bordering on hatred for everything MLS that they let infect them when it comes to the assessment of a situation like that. So well done, Stu Holden, coming on and providing a take like that.
What was interesting, though, is the next topic was Luca De La Torre's move to San Diego, and Stu trashed that move, said it was a mistake for him to go back to MLS. So yeah, to your point, Stu is not advocating for any U.S. player who's in Europe right now to come back to MLS. He merely said MLS should try to sign those players to attract more buzz ahead of the 2026 World Cup. So it's a little bit different than Landon Donovan advocating for Christian Pulisic to come back to MLS and play for the Galaxy instead of AC Milan.
Well, why is it different?
Well, because, I'm agreeing with what you said. Stu was making a distinction between what's best for MLS and what's best for the U.S. national team. And merely, specifically from the lens of MLS, he said they should try to sign these big American players. But whether that's the right career move for them is a separate conversation. Landon actually took it a step further and said that these U.S. players should come back to MLS. So it is a slightly different take that Landon had versus what Stu said.
Well, I didn't hear that Stu said it was not a good career move. Did he say that?
No, but he said what's best for the U.S. national team and what's best for MLS don't necessarily align. And he said at one point, people can debate for each of these players if it makes sense or not, but strictly from MLS's perspective, they should try to sign them.
That we are still talking about this goes to my point. Well done, Stu Holden. Good take.
Next up for the U.S. national team will be the Nations League Final Four in March. A reminder, they will face Panama in the semis, and then if they advance, it will be either Mexico or Canada in the final. Those matches all taking place at SoFi Stadium, so we'll look forward to that. Shall we transition to Americans who are plying their trade in Europe?
Please.
All right, we're going to begin in the Premier League, where Bournemouth dismantled Nottingham Forest 5-0. Tyler Adams went all 90 minutes and turned in a sensational performance, including 2 assists, one to Kluivert, another to Utada. That's 3 assists in the last 2 games for him. He is playing some of the best football of his career. In fact, I would say in the Yanks Abroad power rankings, he is now right up there alongside Pulisic and Jedi. It's been amazing to see Adams the last few games.
Has it been amazing? Why is it amazing? We've always known how good a player he is. Obviously, of late, with all of his injuries, that's been the problem here. But why do you seem so surprised that this is the Tyler Adams we're seeing?
After such a long layoff, I thought it would take him a little bit longer to get up to speed. He's walked right back into that Bournemouth lineup and looked terrific.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we talked about whether we were going to see the same Tyler Adams. Well, I think we are seeing the same Tyler Adams. And that Tyler Adams is friggin' awesome. And again, as long as he stays healthy, this is good for obviously the United States. And I love, while it's not necessarily a surprise to us, I love as more and more people see him and see him on a consistent basis. Because keep in mind, when we see him with the national team, that's feast or famine type of thing. But when people see him week in and week out doing it, that credibility that I think a lot of us in the U.S. sphere have already given him, I think there's a lot of other people that will come around and say, wow, this guy is absolutely worth the money, and he is vital in terms of what he is doing. Now, some of it goes unnoticed. Some of it doesn't. I mean, his first assist was, basically give the ball 10 yards and then guy goes 70 yards and scores a goal. Second assist was really, really good. And Tyler Adams assisting, that's not necessarily where his greatness lies. It's, clogging up passing lanes and his leadership on and off the field, and understanding the game and positioning himself in places to either make himself available from an attacking perspective or shutting things down from a defensive perspective, and getting up and down the field and back and forth with that motor of his that he has. So listen, happy days are here again when it comes to Tyler Adams.
We did get a question on X. How much of a better team will the U.S. be with a healthy Tyler Adams? To me, it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, he is a game changer. He elevates the ceiling of that team considerably.
So what is it? I think I said 17%. 17% better. I mean, let's be honest. I think that even Pochettino, who hasn't had Tyler Adams yet, even from afar can recognize that, hey, my team is here, and with Tyler Adams, it's here. So I put, a 17% better. And if you knew that you had a player on your roster that made you 17% better, obviously you would want that player to be on the field as much as possible. That's how good he is. I also think that that's how much respect his own teammates have and still have for him. And let's hope that we get to see that 17%. Who knows? Maybe someone out there believes that it should be 20% or something like that. That's how good he is.
Speaking of Jedi Robinson, he went all 90 minutes for Fulham in their 1-0 home defeat to Manchester United. Lisandro Martinez scored the only goal. Ruben Amorim, this guy likes to drop some bombs. Remember, he recently said that this was maybe the worst team in Manchester United history. And then after this game, and speaking about Marcus Rashford, who once again was not involved, he said he'd rather play the goalkeeper coach than somebody who's not giving it his all.
I love him. I love Ruben. I love, the recognition of the moment and the recognition of the power that he has. Because he might not be able to do this at a different time, but he has been chosen. Obviously, they believe that he is the right person for the job. And in that comes this power. And he gets to kind of lay down the law. And in doing so, establish internally to his players, but also externally to everybody else, and whether it's the fans or whether it's the media out there, who he is. And certainly, by doing this and doing this on a consistent basis, he's saying there's a new sheriff in town, and we are going to do things differently. And if you don't like it, you can leave, but you sure as hell aren't going to be involved. Now that he said it this interestingly, makes it that much better. I am fascinated by what Rashford's problem is. Because, look, there are plenty of times in clubs where it's just not working out. And it could be a situation on the field, so from a tactical perspective, the way that they play, or it could be a personal situation off the field. And this has been going south for a while right now. But to come out so blatantly, and he's using Rashford because he might know that he's halfway out the door anyway. He's using Rashford, again, to send that message to everybody that you cannot do things the way that you did in the past. And I don't think he would just throw Rashford under the bus if it wasn't warranted.
Yeah, I think he will leave before the end of this window. I've heard AC Milan, Borussia Dortmund, and Barcelona. It sounds like his preference would be Barcelona, but as always with that club, there's questions over the finances, and they're trying to figure out if they can afford him, and so we'll see what happens in the next few days. But yeah, I think Rashford is certainly on his way out the door there. Staying in England, but dropping down a level to the Championship, Josh Sargent is healthy again, and he scored twice this past weekend for Norwich in their 5-1 win over Swansea.
What I love about Josh Sargent, not just scoring, it's great, but there's a ruthlessness in the way that he even took the goals that we saw here. In that, sometimes great goal scorers, they have the angle, and again, we've talked before about not even having to hit it hard and everything but there's also goal scorers out there that are almost just brute force. And that doesn't do it justice, because they find themselves, and if you watch Josh Sargent's goals, he just smacks it. Because in the moment that he receives the ball, in both of these goals, one on one end and the other at the other end, but both onto his right foot, there's only one thing that he is doing. He knows he has separation, so he knows he has time and space, not forever, but time and space. And yes, traditionally, you would say, hit it to the corner and do all that kind of stuff. But it's almost as if he knows this is already going in. It's a fait accompli. And he's hitting it with such, yes, with power, but with like a vengeance. And I love that we are seeing that, because, at the highest level, when it comes to scoring goals, there are players that they already know this is going in the back of the net. It doesn't always have to be pretty, but it's going in the back of the net. And the years, I think about like the Batistutas, and even like a Luis Suarez. And sometimes it doesn't look pretty, and you're like, whoa, did he really do something there? Absolutely, he did something there, and it was already in the back of the goal when it came onto his foot.
Batistuta, who you played against in Italy in the 90s, right?
Long time ago, yeah.
Well, we're going to revisit your time in Serie A later on the pod.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of Serie A, we go there next. AC Milan claimed a 3-2 home win over Parma. Pulisic and Mosse both started. Pulisic scored from the penalty spot, and Mosse provided a lovely assist to Reinders for another Milan goal.
Yeah, wonderful assist from Mosse. When it comes to Pulisic, at this point, it should be known, and if you don't know, I can't believe you don't know this yet, but Pulisic has yet to miss a penalty for either club or country, which is pretty incredible. And it shows, I think, the mental fortitude that he has. Also, there's a lot of people that have been commenting to me about at this point, I guess it's classic way in which he takes penalties. There's none of the stop and start and the stuttering and all that kind of stuff, which I know drives a lot of people. Some people very, very close to me, drives them insane. I have no problem with it. I actually enjoy the stutter step and the feints and all that kind of stuff. I know your friend Neymar loves to do that kind of stuff. But Christian Pulisic, he just decides where he's going, and he doesn't necessarily shade it, but it's all kind of one motion in a much more traditional type of sense. So great for him to get on the scoring sheet. And when it comes to Mosse, like you mentioned, the pass was just wonderful. Long distance, seeing all the different players, but also seeing where they would be in a matter of milliseconds later, and being able to do all the different calculations in his head and putting it just on a platter.
Crazy scenes at the final whistle with new Milan boss Sergio Conceição getting into it with Calabria, the captain. Now, they've since both said it's no big deal, but in the moment...
It's emotional, baby. It's emotional, It's emotion and passion.
Next up for AC Milan, they are away to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. Milan busy in the transfer market. They have signed Kyle Walker. I mentioned earlier they were linked to Marcus Rashford, and now they are trying to acquire Mexican striker Santi Jimenez from Feyenoord.
All right, so Walker's a loan, right? This one would be a sale. Santiago Jimenez. Now, Mosse, explain this to me. Where is he going to play?
Yeah, right now it's Morata starting. They've also got Tammy Abraham on loan. It seems pretty crowded. They also have Luka Jovic, but nevertheless, Santi is a talented young player, so maybe this is a move thinking several years down the road. Zlatan evidently is pushing for this.
Zlatan has had his time over here in the United States, and therefore CONCACAF, and maybe he has a recognition that they're good players, and there are big markets out there that AC Milan might want to attract when it comes to people watching their brand.
Juventus suffered their first Serie A defeat of the campaign. They lost 2-1 away to Napoli. Weston McKennie started at right back. Timmy Weah, an unused sub. And this was a mildly concerning development. Juve acquired Randall Colomwani, who is a similar type of player as Weah, and he walked right into the starting lineup and scored for Juve. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Weah has come in and out of favor and has not been an established type of star, and certainly not relative to Weston McKennie, or when it comes to the impact that someone like Christian Pulisic has. But I mean, so do you think that this would signal an even bigger challenge that would then signal, come the summer, a possible look elsewhere?
Possibly, yeah. It's more competition for him. Yeah.
All right, so when it comes to the actual standings here, because we talk about Milan now, and obviously we talk about it relative to Christian Pulisic and relative to the American players over there, which is what this podcast does. But it's still a 7th place Milan right now, and so all of this is in the context of a Milan that is not great, and that's just the reality of where this team is right now, and. Juventus sitting at 5th. So our American players that we are talking about are playing for big clubs in terms of the history and the brand, but big clubs that at this moment are less than great.
Yeah, Milan made a coaching change recently as a result, and we talked about them being busy in the transfer market. So yeah, there's a recognition that they need to upgrade and change sort of the direction of the season for sure.
All right, where to now, Mosse?
Well, let me just say on the Champions League, AC Milan, they are in good shape to finish in the top 8 and go straight into the round of 16. Juve this week hosts Benfica, and they look headed for the playoffs, and they could potentially face a team like Real Madrid or Bayern Munich that look based on where the standings are right now, but obviously that could change, so it's something to keep an eye on. We go to the Eredivisie next. PSV claimed a 3-2 home win over NAC. Pepi came on as a sub and scored one of the PSV goals.
I love his goal because he basically directs it with his hands. He says, "Put the ball here, and because I am a super sub and what I do is get on the field and score goals, I will put the ball in the back of the net," which is exactly what he did, what he has done on a consistent basis, and it's been fun. It's been fun to watch. But all the times that we talk about Pepi, it's all right. Okay, yes, but. Now what? What does he have to do to start? Well, he's gotten a start here or there, but he is still basically a super sub here. Okay, so does he need to find some place to go? And then Ernie Stewart will come out and say, no, he's not going anywhere. Absolutely not. No, who knows? Maybe he's playing a little bit of a fool there. But the reality is that Ricardo Pepi, in these moments that we see him, he's becoming more clinical. And as we mentioned earlier with the Josh Sargent, he's becoming more ruthless. And I guess that just comes with time for not just goal scorers, but players in general. But it's nice to see. So much so that it's just clockwork. He knows, hey, there's the diagonal run that I need to do. I'm going to make sure they understand. And it doesn't matter whether the defender sees me signaling or everybody on the field sees me signaling, because the space is already there. I just have to time my run correctly. They have to feed the ball correctly, but once it's in my range, if you will, I'm gonna finish it, as he did.
PSV hosts Liverpool in the Champions League this week. A fun one there. We go to Germany.
Good luck
next.
with that.
John Tolkien made his Bundesliga debut. Came on as a sub for Holstein Kiel in their 2-2 draw away to Wolfsburg. Also this past week, an 18-year-old defender, Noah Kai Banks, started for Augsburg in their 2-1 win over Heidenheim. This kid just got called up to the first team earlier this month. He has already played more minutes in the Bundesliga this season than Gio Reyna. And I keep talking about center back needing to emerge to change the calculus at that position. This could be it. This kid looks very promising so far.
As we said, there are openings when it comes to the center back position. Actually, the center back positions. We know that, knock on wood, Serginho Dest continues to get back, but that right back position, I think, is open. We've talked about Matt Turner and some of the problems in goal, and then obviously up top. So if Again, if you are a center back right now and you have an American passport, there is an opportunity for you. So let's call them up. Let's do it.
We go to La Liga next. Johnny Cardoso went all 90 minutes for Betis in their 1-0 away win over Stu Holden's Mallorca. Tom Bogert and others reporting that Johnny was on Wolves' radar. Doesn't look like a deal will happen in this window. Remember, in the summer, Tottenham have a 2-week period in which they can sign Johnny for £21 million if they exercise that clause. Looks like he is very much in demand right now.
So you think they'll do it? Tottenham?
I don't know. Depends on who the coach is. Postecoglou might not be long for that job.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Right? There might be a changing of the guard. By the way, you mentioned Tom Bogart, right?
Yes. We are going to have him on this pod as a guest. Very excited about that.
There we go.
We'll talk a little bit about transfers, but mostly about the Knicks. I want to get his take on Mitch Robinson's impending return, whether the Knicks need to make a trade at the deadline for more bench, wing depth, and the rest. So, no, I'm kidding. We'll talk to Tom about all things transfers. He is the guru, as we've talked about.
He's great.
When it comes
he's
to
great. And so he's kind enough to come on to our show next week. So,
by the way, did you see the Extra Time pod is no more?
I did, yeah. Rest in peace. I mean, that's a hell of a run, as we know, when it comes to podcasts and essential listening and then viewing as it translated into visual and audio and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think that they recognized that, and for those that don't know, MLS Extra Time was, and for a number of years, the place to go for all of your MLS talk. But it was done by Major League Soccer. And it was done out of necessity because nobody else was really doing that. And as the ecosystem has grown when it comes to media and podcasts, I think they recognize that others are fulfilling the MLS appetite, if you will. And obviously the relationship with Apple, they might not have seen it as in synergy with what they are doing going forward. But thank you to everybody over there through the years, all the men and women in front of the microphones and behind the microphones that have put that on. You kept us informed and entertained year after year after year.
Before we move off Mallorca, Betis have acquired Anthony on loan from Manchester United, so they now have 2 Brazilian reclamation projects in Vitor Roque and Anthony. Also, before we started taping, Sean Sullivan informed us that he had a dream that he was in Mallorca trying to get tickets to this game. How bizarre was that?
Who dreams about Mallorca? Besides Stu.
Last Wednesday when I did the pod with Stu, beforehand when we were having our little rundown meeting, Sean Sullivan at one point said, if I was on the desk with you guys and it was a 3-man pod, this is the point I would make here. And he said it in a way he was clearly angling to be in that seat. I think 2025 is the year where Sean's going to push for kind of an on-air role, similar to Puffy when he first was behind the scenes with Biggie and then became an artist himself. Hopefully that's where the similarities end between Sean Sullivan and P. Diddy.
Mosse, back in all the control rooms, all the men and women, they sit and they laugh at us, and they can talk amongst themselves and ridicule us, either what we're doing visually or the things that we say, but they all want to be here. They all want to be in these chairs, Mosse. They all want to be in front of the camera. And, Sean's no different. And by the way, if he were to be, he'd be great because he has some incredible takes and he's incredibly intelligent. But we need him where he is right now. Especially, we got a lot of changes coming here when it comes to our digital side. So we'll let you know what's going on going forward. But we need all hands on deck going forward.
Staying in La Liga, Real Madrid this past weekend, 3-0 away win over Valladolid. Mbappe scored a hat-trick after a rough start to life there. He has been sensational in recent weeks. He's up to 21 goals in all competitions, 15 in La Liga. There's a fun Pichichi race brewing between Lewandowski and Mbappe. Lewandowski got 1 this past weekend in Barcelona's 7-1 demolition of Valencia. He's at 17, Mbappe at 15.
And, I think he's expressed and, talked to the press about the fact that he is more confident and because he's more comfortable. And I guess this comes with time. And, while he is, arguably one of the greatest goal scorers he is definitely one of the greatest goal scorers in the world, it's still a transition and a different locker room and different teammates and different culture and different country. And it sometimes takes a little bit of time. But man, oh man, he is flying right now.
And then lastly, I've mentioned the Champions League a few times in this segment. It is match day 8 this week, the conclusion of the league phase. The big story, Manchester City right now are in the outside looking in 25th place. They do host Club Brugge. If they win, they're in. So they're probably going to make it. Nevertheless, the mere fact they're in this situation is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to cut it close, but they'll figure it out.
And they're coming off a nice win, beating Chelsea 3-1 at the weekend. So they have some momentum there. And yeah, I expect them to handle their business here. That is it.
It'll be like the Buckeyes of Ohio State. You know, you have a little problem during the regular season, stuff like that, but ultimately you get there.
Now, let me ask you this. How is your wife dealing with the roller coaster between Ohio State and the Detroit Lions? Because it was...
Yeah, so the disappointment of the Detroit Lions was heavy for all of us Detroit Lions fans, but for her and Buckeyes fans, she had that counterbalance and stuff like that. So, but still, it hurts because of what happened last year. You thought, all right, you're going to grow, you're going to get better. I'm talking about the Lions right now, and to have the worst game at the worst possible moment, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, Dan Campbell, this loose coaching style is great until you have 12 men on the field on a 4th and 2. So you might need to tighten things up a little bit.
Wow. And then they're taking all of our talent and, it's whatever. It's just more Lions stuff. All right, anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. It's time for Ask Alexi. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. Keep in mind that our handle out there on the old social media is SOTU with Alexi, and you can use that hashtag AskAlexi, or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. Mosse, what do the folks want to know today?
First up, a question on X. John asks, can you talk us through each of your 2 goals on the next show? What he's alluding to is after Christian Pulisic scored this past weekend, they threw up a graphic of American goal scorers in Serie A, and you were in there with 2. It wasn't easy, but we tracked down footage of those 2 goals and also one you scored in the Coppa Italia.
Wow, there's footage. Grainy, black and white footage, kind of... All right, well, that it exists is amazing. Okay, so... You really want to do this? All right. So the first one was against AC Milan. So if you're going to start off scoring, score against AC Milan in a win over AC Milan. And for those that are watching, you can see not only did I score, but that I went and jumped into the stands and everything. And I got a yellow card for leaving the field of play. So this was against AC Milan.
This is 94-95 campaign?
This is 94-95 campaign. So for us, the team I played for, which was Padova, which is a city right outside of Venice in the north of Italy, they had just come up into Serie A for the first time ever. So the only goal that we had was to stay in Serie A. So a win against AC Milan was something that we did not anticipate.
AC Milan were the reigning European champions. They won the Champions League in 94, beating Barcelona and Athens in the final. I mean, this team was loaded. Maldini, yes. Baresi, Boban, Savicevic, and you scored against
at that time. There was a lot of very, very good players. And it was amazing for me as the American to step on the field next to these players, even though I had played in a World Cup, but next to these players that I had watched over the last few years watching Italian soccer. And Bora Milutinovic, our national team coach, would make us go and watch any game that was happening, including every single Serie A game that was beamed over to the United States. We would go to Hennessy's Bar in Manhattan. No, not in Manhattan Beach, in Laguna Beach. And we would watch Serie A soccer. Amazing thing. So anyway, that was the first goal. Keep in mind that although I made a lot of my living in the air, I didn't score a single goal with my head in Italy. They were all with the feet. So that was the first one. We ended up winning 2-1 against Milan. Huge home win. The second one was later on in the season against Torino, if I remember correctly. We ended up also winning that game 4-2. And for those that are watching, I mean, look at this near post run by this young buck. My goodness. Wow. That is amazing. And all it takes is a little touch, and it goes in the back of the net. So those are the 2 goals in Serie A that I scored. And unless something dramatically happens with my health, I'm not going to catch Christian Pulisic or Michael Bradley for that matter, or anybody else that's ahead of me. And we do have a bonus one, though, Mosse. We played in the San Siro. So the first time I played in San Siro when I was playing in Italy was in the Coppa Italia against Inter Milan. And for those that are watching, it just fell to my feet. It went in. I didn't realize that it counted because I thought there was going to be a foul or there's going to be an offside or something like that. And you can see everybody realizing that, oh yeah, this is going to count. It ends up being the winning goal. We beat Inter Milan in the San Siro, and I get the goal. So that was a pretty good day. So there's not a lot of goals to choose from, albeit from a defender. But if you're going to do it, make them count.
Inter Milan 94-95 was Dennis Bergkamp on that team,
yep.
I believe. Yeah.
Bergkamp, yeah, and let's see. God, I can't remember who else. There was another Dutch player there too. They both came together. I can't remember his name.
If I'm not mistaken, the following season, 95-96, you've told me when you played against AC Milan, George Weah scored his first Serie A goal against you. He didn't know much about it, a ball that kind of hit his face and went in.
Hit the back of his head and went in, and I was so irritated with myself that I had let him score off of a set piece, off of his head. But when I say it hit the back of his head, it glanced off the back of his head. But he could not have been nicer, and I'll never forget running around, because this was his kind of introduction into Serie A. And he would go on to score lots and lots of goals. He was constantly telling himself in English, keep it simple, keep it simple. So I'm running around marking the guy, and he's like, keep it simple, keep it, talking to himself. But what a player, my goodness.
95 was the first year that the Ballon d'Or was open to non-European players, and George Weah won it in 95. He's still the only African player to win it. A lot of people think Mo Salah might put an end to that drought here in 2025.
Yes. Look at that.
We shall
Well,
see.
I hope we've satisfied John over there on X. And for those that stuck around, thank you for letting me go down,
And I buried the lead. George Weah is, of course, the father of Timmy Weah, a U.S. international who we spoke about earlier in the pod, who's in Italy himself right now playing for Juventus. Next up, another question on X. Michael asks, will the U.S. men's national team get out of the group stage? He's talking, of course, about the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
Yes. I mean, we have long since ceased measuring ourselves relative to getting out of a group stage of a men's World Cup. So that should not even be a question. The question is how far we are going to go and what is acceptable in 2026. And actually, this kind of dovetails into something I'm going to talk about in my one for the road here. But yes, Michael, we will get out of the group stage. Then the pathway to what would be, for a lot of people, considered a type of miracle finish, but also something that we are hoping and praying happens, because magic can happen, especially at a home World Cup. Then it gets interesting. A couple of things, Mosse, before we take another quick break here. The draw for the World Cup will be happening in December of this year. I mean, I can't believe it's just coming so fast. Traditionally, it happens in December for a Summer World Cup, and it will be happening again in December. We don't know where, but with all the hoopla and continued attention of Miami, it would not surprise me in the least if it was somewhere like Miami. Although back in '94, it was in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is not a host city, so who knows? Maybe they could do a Vegas type of thing there happening. World Cup qualifying ends in November, and that's why it happens in December, and we'll find out what that pathway looks like to not just getting out of the group, Michael, but going on, hopefully, to bigger and better things. Anything else from an AskAlexi perspective, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, as I said, let's take a quick break. I'll come back with my one for the road. I'll talk a little bit more about this road up to 2026 and hopefully what 2026 is going to look like on and off the field. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. It's the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road, and today is no different. As we mentioned, 500 days until the 2026 World Cup. It's coming fast and furious, and there's still plenty of work to do. As I mentioned, I have been on the road over the last week, including a stop in Houston to participate in a sponsor luncheon of folks that are there in terms of Houston 26, which is one of the host cities. And it's going to be fun to see what these host cities look like. Mosse, I've told you before that I learned a tremendous amount from working in the front offices of a bunch of different MLS clubs. And part of it was the people that were around me and the incredible men and women that I worked with. One of those people, when I was in New York at the time, they were called the Metro Stars, and then the transition to the Red Bulls, was a guy by the name of Chris Canetti. You might know him for his work, not just with the then Metro Stars, but then he went on with the Houston Dynamo, and now he works down in Houston as the head of basically the organizing committee for the World Cup. Now, it's a little bit different. I'm not going to get too into the weeds when it comes to how FIFA is organizing this World Cup, but it is different than previous World Cup in that they have taken it in-house. Now, it doesn't mean that people like Chris Canetti and his team down in Houston aren't on the ground and living in the city and organizing it, but they're doing it at the behest and at the direction of FIFA. However, this is their city. They know what their city needs to do in order to live up to the requirements when it comes to what FIFA wants for a World Cup. And that can be everything from, the grass that is going to be laid on the field. And in this case, on an indoor field with a retractable roof and that type of situation. I remember back in 1994 in the Silverdome having an indoor situation and all that entails. Also, people are visiting your city. So what it looks like from the moment that they get to the city, when they land at the airport, the accommodations, the festivities that go on, not just the 2 hours of the actual game, but everything around the city. And it was really interesting talking to Chris Canetti. And as I said before, this guy is just so smart about the business of sports and the business of soccer. And he knows his city, in this case, Houston, but he also knows soccer, and he knows some of the challenges. And I think he would be the first to tell you that it's coming fast, and he understands that, and they need to be prepared to introduce people that maybe have never been to Houston, either from around the country or many people from around the world, and to make sure whatever length of time they spend in Houston, they take that message, because this is an advertisement, and they take that back to, their countries of origin or, their cities that they live elsewhere. And that just doesn't happen overnight. That takes a lot of planning. That takes a lot of resource. It takes a lot of money. And it takes a lot of knowledge and understanding of what needs to be done. You talk about fan fests. Well, fan fests don't just happen on their own. And the ability to put on a good party and a good show so that people leave your city, again, in this case, Houston, but this applies to all of the cities out there that are going to host the World Cup, to leave your city with a favorable or maybe more favorable view of that city because of the experience, and using and harnessing this World Cup, not just to make money, because that is certainly a part of it, because of the influx of business. People are going to make money, and that's something that they should do, and I hope they make as much money as they possibly can, but also harnessing it to give people a better understanding and, like I said, hopefully a much more positive view of the city that they have spent their time in, and the relationships that they have established, like I said, the experiences, whether it's going to a bar, whether it's going to a restaurant, whether it's walking around town, that it's fun, that it's vibrant, that it's exciting, that it's safe. All of those different things. There are men and women right now that are on the ground, and then more men and women that are going to come in later on, especially when it comes to FIFA, as they start to populate some of these cities, that their job is to make sure that people have a good time. Their job is to make sure that this is a seminal moment for their city and obviously for the country, and I guess in this case for the countries in terms of the experience that people have. And it's not easy, and it's not all going to go as planned, but ultimately you like to think that they are given the resources and that they have, like I said, the knowledge to be able to do it so that when all is said and done, people look back, not just the day later, but the year later and years later, and they think about the people that they met, and they think about the times that they had, and they think about the games that they saw. And it's all within the framework of the city that they experienced it in. And you hope that it's a positive type of experience.
I was in Houston in early 2024 for the national championship game. It was a quick in and out trip. Didn't get to do much beyond go to the game. I would like to go back to visit the NASA Space Center.
Yes. And so incorporating those types of things that are already there, saying, hey, yeah, you're here for a soccer game, but these are all the other things that you can do. Wonderful food there. Obviously, wonderful music. Go ahead.
I know Stu Holden fancies himself Mr. Houston. It had to be satisfying that you're the one that got the call. You've really overtaken him in the sort of FIFA pecking order.
I mean, you talked to Stu, and I was walking around Houston, and I was like, well, where's the statue and that type of homage to him? And I did not see a whole lot. And so then I started asking the locals, do you know Stu Holden? What do you think of Stu Holden? A couple people were less than gracious, less than kind in the way that they talked about. But it should be said that there are other people that think he's the bee's knees and just absolutely love him. So, you take the good with the bad when it comes to something like that. I still think that Stu Holden has a future when it comes to his image in Houston. But, I think I also kind of established a little bit something in Houston that I think is going to last forever.
One last thing. I know you were also in D.C. for the inauguration.
Yes.
We don't talk politics on this podcast. I think it's the only 2 hours of the week in which you don't talk politics these days. But your boy did do something that I liked.
What's that?
Declassifying the remaining JFK files. As you know, I am a big JFK assassination buff.
Bring it on, baby.
The files haven't even been released yet, but the mere news that they're going to be sent me down that rabbit hole this past week and watched a couple of documentaries. So I'm ready to find out the truth. Finally.
Hey, listen. It was wonderful, and like you said, we don't talk politics on here. Obviously, everybody knows my politics. I will say that when it comes to soccer, though, Gianni Infantino had a golden ticket to the inauguration, and for those that watched the inauguration in the rotunda, there was Gianni Infantino, and soccer, and more importantly, the 2026 World Cup, I think, is absolutely. It's not just on the radar, is a priority for the Trump administration in that they know they have an opportunity. They know, again, talking about harnessing, we just talked about Houston. I think that this administration and therefore our country recognizes that there is an opportunity with the 26th World Cup, and by the way, with the Olympics too, to use this sport to understand that the world is going to come to our shores and again, in the same way that I talked about Houston, to make sure that it is an experience that they never forget in a positive type of sense.
And on JFK, people keep saying there will be no smoking gun. I disagree. I'm expecting a CIA memo titled, "We did it."
Well, let's get it done here. Now they've talked about it. Let's get these files out and let's figure it out. All right. Listen, great to be back with you and everybody else out here. Keep reviewing, keep downloading, keep subscribing, keep rating, keep smashing those buttons left and right over there on the old, what do they call that over there? The YouTube channel, right? Subscribe to that, smash the buttons up and down, all that kind of stuff. Spotify, Apple, all the different things out there that you use to either watch this show or to listen to this show. We really, really appreciate it. We will talk to you again later on this week. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.